Stephanie, and I'd like to welcome you to our webinar today, Service Catalog Project, Prepare Your Team for Success. Just a few quick notes. Your phone lines are muted today, so if you have any questions, please use the chat panel. Please be sure to send your questions to all participants, and that way I can field the questions and get them assigned. Also, you may find it helpful to go full screen mode later in the presentation. When Jeff does his demo, you will find this helpful to be able to see the details on the portal screen. And as always, I am recording this presentation, so you will receive an email with the recording link and the slides by tomorrow afternoon. So at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Don Casson, CEO of Evergreen Systems. Don?
Thank you, Stephanie. Looks like I advanced the slide too far. There we go. Hi, I'm Don Casson, CEO of Evergreen, and with me is Jeff Benedict, who heads up our ITSM practice and leads our innovation efforts. So we got something new today. See if I can get it to go to the right one. So we're adding a ability to do polling and questionnaires inside the webinars, and so we thought we'd start it out with an easy one, bit of a softball. And what we're trying to do here is get your feedback on what future webinar topics you might be interested in. And so in order to fill this out, all you have to do is select your top 3. And then we'll get that information, and then we'll stir that into our planning and what we're doing going forward. And I'll give you about 40 seconds more to do it. The first one, obviously, is better organizing and managing services. The second one is building high-quality services across IT. There's a 35-character limit in the application. That's why you see these truncations. The third is building Amazon-like employee portal experience and what goes along with that. The fourth is running services better with a service manager dashboard. The fifth is lowering IT cost, combining self-service, catalog, and automation. Really, it's kind of a hard one to truncate. And the last one is sort of the pros and cons, or this is the pros and cons. Look like the pros and cons of ServiceNow's new service portal. So if you can do that, I'll give you another 15, 20 seconds. Got about 20 of you that have registered so far. 23. It's fine. I can watch the counter go up. 29. Okay, so I'm going to 5 more seconds and I'll shut it down. We'll close the poll. We've got 34 responses. Thank you all very much. I will tell you that number 1 is highly desirable. It's almost twice as big as any of the others. So, all right, let's close that. And we'll go to the next slide. So here's our agenda for the day. If you're new to the series, welcome. If you're a past attendee, thanks for coming back. Our goal, as always, is to share valuable information and insights you can use in your planning and activities today. The topic we'll explore today is preparing your organization for a successful service catalog project. So after a little bit about Evergreen, we'll dive into that. And beyond that, as always, we'll demonstrate some of the concepts discussed in our evolving view of a very advanced self-service catalog and portal experience, which happens to be built on ServiceNow. And then we'll have Q&A if you guys have any questions. So Evergreen is a U.S.-based consulting firm. We've worked with hundreds of mid-market, Fortune 1000 organizations and public sector to improve IT service management execution. Over 4,000 projects in our 18 years in existence, so quite a number of them. We are full life cycle, meaning we have both process and consulting, so Evergreen can be sort of a one-stop shop for solving the problem and putting more of your energy on that particular problem at hand. We're also one of 2 top-tier gold ServiceNow U.S. partners that are not the big 5, now that Fruition and Cloud Sherpa have been bought up into the global systems integrators. The last point, though, we also have over a decade of experience in all of the ServiceNow discipline areas, very broad, but we view all of this today from a perspective we call customer-centric service management. Some of you may have seen this slide, I'm sure, but at Evergreen, and be quick, we We think traditional ITSM thinking is wrong because it puts the customer, that's who we're doing this for, last place. It's hard to believe, but it is true. And it's kind of like that game, Where's Waldo? 2 years ago, we woke up to that. We were having all these beautiful self-service experiences with Amazon and Apple and Google and Zappos and Airbnb, and we wondered, why can't our ITSM customers have the same thing? So we began challenging our thinking in ITSM and came up with the approach we call CustomerCentric ITSM, and that is looking at everything we do from the customer in first rather than IT out. It sounds pretty simple, but if we start that way, looking from the customer's perspective, we do things differently. We would focus on preventing incidents rather than just handling them. We use self-service, and this is a really cool point, we use self-service and automation across ITSM to make customers happier and reduce the work of IT. We see services as end-to-end team value chains rather than disconnected silos. And this better understanding leads naturally to better, smaller, and faster changes, kind of like DevOps, with less change failures because we know better. So if we start with the customer, it really does change a lot of the things we do. While most of our new customers start here, this is only the second time I've actually highlighted this offer that we have, a 2-week strategy roadmap engagement. And what I'd like to point out, we have delivered this a couple of dozen times now. So we get very significant reuse on it, which allows us to bring more and more value for the price every time we do it. So not only does it give you a detailed 3-phase strategy and roadmap, but we also work with your team to help you create initial working service taxonomy using our mind map application, which you get to keep. We work through defining service ownership and service governance with a perspective on roles and responsibilities and an initial RACI, the RACI mapping deliverable. We guide you through a complete service design process that we have, and then working together, we build several sample services with your team. So you go hands-on in actual service construction and organization. You get a sense for how to do that in a complete and consistent way. And then you keep the process to build more. It's your template. Then we deliver the findings and executive briefing along with a phase 1 statement of work for your use. So last but not least, we also create a future state portal for you, kind of a working with your look and feel for self-service catalog and demonstration, which you can go, it's a sandbox in the cloud, and you can then use along with your roadmap and your other components to demonstrate what the future of customer-centric service might look like in your organization. So we do all of that for in 2 weeks for $17,500. Okay, let's get into our topic. Our goal today is to make the high points really clear, while also giving you some simple tools to help you get your organization ready. We took a look at the same topic a year ago, and it's time to revisit it and expand it a little bit. For most every point we cover today, there's a whole lot of additional supporting material you can find in our recorded webinar and PowerPoint slides on our website under resources. It's organized by title, so it's easy to find what you're looking for. I've identified these reference materials specifically in the slides ahead with purple boxes at the bottom. And that's on the slides where it's relevant, right? And on some of the slides, there's also 3 other useful guides you'll see show up. Services definition, service taxonomy, and service governance. And these are things we have available, and you'll see where they might add value. Right? The point of all that is to make the presentation more of a reference guide for you so you can print it out and use it if you wanted to. A good place to begin this conversation is with the classic questions: who, what, when, where, how, and why. And then we consider that against the framework we use for IT projects: people, process, technology, and culture. This will give you a way to build a working list of the key questions you need answers to, even beyond phase 1, and to make sure you don't forget something that's important. So we'll start with people. Here are some of the questions we might want to consider from the people perspective. Determining who should be involved is critical for success, as all service catalogs involve all parts of IT. That's how IT gets delivered. In order to have consent and consensus, who needs to be part of this? Who are the early adopters and who are the late adopters? How can each of those help you? What roles are needed and who might best fill them? There is some useful roles information regarding service owners in our archived webinars, A Day in the Life of the Service Owner, and 3 Keys to Delivering Great IT Services, as well as our Services Definition Guide. So you see those reference points there on the slide. A focus on delivering customer-centric IT services is very different from how IT has traditionally operated. What sorts of policies and processes might be useful to help us manage and deliver this way? How can we agree on them and get broader adoption of them? What metrics are enough to get us started but still ensure we are successful in phase 1? Finally, how do we go about getting these deeply baked in the technology so the work comes to us with process and policy compliance already in place? We might already have a good technology platform, we might need new enabling technology, or we might even have competing platform choices or alternatives both inside and outside of IT in our organization. How do we ensure we have a good platform that can easily incorporate or even bring some customer-centric best practices in policy and process? How do we define the impact of culture on our initial service catalog project? What are the keys to successful customer adoption? What are the common objections customers raise and common risks we will face? How do we set and manage customer expectations? Now, culture is particularly important in this conversation because a lot of IT projects, we have a lot of best practices we actually know how to do well a lot of the things we're doing. In most cases, we don't know how to do this well because we haven't done it well before. Now we get to the first of our 5 steps. We're going to look at the ways we can help you prepare the kind of things you want to do. Those questions we ask, they're the questions, that's your homework, right? To go out and start to explore the value of those things. So here are the steps we're going to take. Let's get really strong clarity about why we're doing this. While we could define more or sort them differently, at the highest level, we can kind of group the reasons or benefits for doing this into 3 big buckets. Customer self-service and strategic alignment. That's about changing the support paradigm, looking customer in rather than IT out, and also changing IT's view of what it does or focuses on in relation to what the business really needs. An Amazon-like experience is a good visual goal. It's a good metaphor. Nearly everyone can readily understand it, and it can snap you back in the proper frame of customer thinking. Key measures here are around customer sat and better supporting key business initiatives. Second one, economic and efficiency benefits are potentially very large through the elimination of work via self-service, choice simplification, and automation. A principle we call balanced design, and that is give the customer what they want to get what IT needs, means we can redesign the work so the customer enjoys the experience through self-service and we aren't even involved. When was the last time you spoke to someone at Amazon? Quality of service, agility, speed, and accuracy is really the overarching measure of success as it combines all the activities of the customer, the business, and IT in one set of measures. A well-founded service catalog project needs to have goals and measures in each of these areas. Lastly, we call it a few steps to take in the gray block. Discuss and document, define and weight your factors, and clearly define your customer. If they don't win, you won't either. Step 2 slides are about governance and roles and responsibilities. There are a lot of words on this slide. Sorry about that. You can see, though, as a service owner, your role is dramatically different and larger than it was as a technical services manager. You'll have a much larger number of questions you need answers to. Truthfully, we aren't even really thinking about many of these questions today. They arise when we see the service from the customer's eyes. Pointing out this gap is a way to really underscore the importance of doing work in this area. Key steps to take are creating a service governance committee, 4 to 5 key folks, and then drafting a simple charter that defines your goals and how you will work and make decisions. Out of that should come a one-page, and I mean one-page, high-level plan of action, which targets your initial operational service catalog as the goal. As you dive deeper into roles and responsibilities, here are some key personas and what they care about to make sure you don't forget about them in your planning. What's interesting to note is there are executive roles in both the customer and provider personas with different needs and wants than the individual customer or provider. The three constituents of the service: customers, providers, and managers. You always have to have all three. And all have needs that must be met to design, deliver, and support durable IT services. Step 3 is getting a common language. Without a common language, you cannot communicate effectively with customers, providers, or managers. Unfortunately, ITIL definitionally runs out of gas a bit as we venture into customer-centric IT service delivery. As an example, there is no ITIL concept or definition of a service taxonomy. Creating a definitions dictionary beyond what ITIL provides for your consistent use, for your common language, is foundational. Evergreen can provide you a definitions dictionary starting point, but you then need to run a 2 to 3 hour workshop with your key team members to refine, agree on, and document your key definitions. Step 4 is understanding the parts. There are more parts than these, but these are the essentials for getting a service catalog project done and building it in a sustainable way. I will cover each one at a high level in the following slides, but for simplicity's sake, I'm providing the purple reference block and the guides picture there for all of the parts, which you see there below. Right? So you won't see that again in step 4. Service catalog is where we offer services to customers. If it isn't active, it isn't in the catalog. Since this is also generally the portal for customer interaction with IT, it usually includes the other interactions the customer commonly wants to have, like reporting a problem, asking questions, checking status of open requests, those kinds of things. Service and request. We run webinars just on this topic alone. And here's the key distinction. A service is consumable and durable. It carries a commitment over time, such as hours of service, levels of service, and quality of service. So it's something that persists over time. A request is a one-time action. It's not durable. Once completed, it's done. Requests are always attached to services. They don't carry SLAs. Instead, they have delivery time commitments for task completion. At a high level, they are mostly the add, change, or remove kinds of actions against a service. Service design process is the consistent method. This is very, if you get one thing that you must do, you must apply a consistent and properly understood service design process across everyone who's delivering and designing services. Right? This process is the consistent method we use to build services. This is a simplified view of a design package for a service, which is called virtual meeting collaboration. Has a description everyone can understand, who can access the service, who owns and manages the service, and the more detailed functionality of the service. Then we find the underlying elements we need to deliver it consistently, like SLAs, OLAs, cost, and supporting teams. Right, so this package is the key to service consistency. The service taxonomy, as we talked about, is a framework for logically managing our services across our different providers in IT, and even beyond IT. Doesn't just have to be IT. It is especially useful when we start to develop a lot of services, as it becomes hard as the providers to understand them otherwise. It's also used to help customers find services or search for services or see logical groupings of services based on terms they understand. Now, that doesn't mean that the customers have to go through the taxonomy to find things. They can use search as the primary means of finding things. But it does ensure that the labels they see when they land somewhere make sense to them. So when we use a taxonomy, the framework is for the providers, but the labels are for the customers. Now, here are two examples of the same taxonomy. On the left-hand side, that's how you see it in a graphical mind mapping tool, which is, as you can see, it's very easy for groups to understand the organization of the services and the grouping of them. So it can be a very efficient way as a group to build a taxonomy and to update a taxonomy. Then the same as you might see presented in a technology like ServiceNow. So these are the same taxonomies, just one in the technology and one in the mind mapping example. So here's a quick look at service performance metrics alignment. And actually, we use this slide a lot because it tells a very big story very simply. These play a valuable intertwined role linking customers and providers, and managers for that matter. In customer-centric service management, we start with KPIs at the customer level, and then they cascade down, and they can turn into SLAs and OLAs. So you can see how that works. And then you can go the other way as well. You can roll them up, and you can go from OLAs all the way up to KPIs. So anyone who's a service provider, even at the lowest part of the pyramid, can see a relationship to the customer. That's a powerful thing. That's customer alignment. Now we come to the part that we really do know best in IT, defining the Phase 1 project activities. This activity comes from and builds on the groundwork established in the first 4 steps. If we just go right to step 5, and we know we've all done it, odds are we will end up with a purely tactical service catalog outcome that our customers aren't happy with and won't use. The first 4 steps done properly give us the ability to draft a clear word picture of the Phase 1 functionality we truly need, customers, providers, and managers. With that as a guide, it is much easier to review and score technology choices and potential service providers for our planned project. Now, there are 2 ways we see customers start, tactically and strategically. In IT, when we hear tactical, we automatically think that's bad. But that's not always true. Tactical start, unless it is not guided by experience, is a fine and viable way to start. Sometimes customers are looking for an upgrade on an existing service catalog or portal, or perhaps want a small pilot-like new portal to show what the future could look like and begin to handle customer interactions. We don't have to do everything from the start in this initial tactical effort here. We don't have to do it, but we do want to avoid a failure. A failure is the case where customers don't see enough value or have a good enough experience to warrant the use, and they go around that portal. So we make it clean and simple. Make sure the services are sticky. They're well-liked, needed, and they're good. Make it very easy to bail out. Very easy. And submit a general request, general help, and make it a good place to quickly check status of any open requests. So it becomes that portal. It has to be, here's the key, it has to be better than just calling or emailing the service desk. On the other hand, the right-hand side, others start strategically. And in this case, they're creating clear direction, consensus, business and economic underpinning, executive understanding and support, and most importantly, educating the whole team on new concepts, best practices, and definition. And that is half of the value right there, is the education of the team in these areas. We think this is a better way to start, and it can be done very affordably in 2 weeks. This is how most of our customers do start, but either way can work. So let's recap. Get real clarity on why you're doing this. Governance roles and responsibilities are critical and different than what you're used to for end-to-end customer service delivery. Common language is the foundation of long-term success. Understanding the parts ensures you create a complete, sustainable service catalog for customers, providers, and managers. One of the things we say here, which is a joke, but it's also true, is that the way we think about things in IT, the customer's experience begins after go live, when we kind of think the project is over. That's when their experience actually begins. We've got to think past that point into the durable, long-term nature of what we're doing. Last, knowing what you want and why is the only way to get exactly what you need. Okay, so that's all for my part today, and I'm going to turn it over to Jeff to demonstrate some of these concepts.
Thank you, Don. I'm going to do one quick slide, then I'll transition and show you ServiceNow. And I wanted to include this slide just to kind of frame out what I plan to show during the demo. And when we approach service catalog projects, as Don kind of indicated, we oftentimes start the conversation with how can we transform the user experience. This oftentimes includes a new electronic experience that's eye-pleasing, easy to use, provides both a usable experience, but also is complete and a complete system of engagement for that consumer. But to balance that, we do need to also provide some service definitions, some structure, some clarity on those expectations of the services, and then kind of lastly, we need to orchestrate and where possible, automate the delivery of these services so we can meet or better yet exceed expectations. As many of you know, the consumer expectations are things that they expect things just to work and work quickly. When I request something, it's at my doorsteps moments later. So let me now share my screen, and I will show you some of these things in ServiceNow world. So I want to start with kind of the consumer customer experience. So we are I'm in our kind of portal template built on a Windows 8 kind of Metro style. This is built on the content management system of ServiceNow. And I'll highlight a couple things. So on the home page, you'll see there's places where we can consume kind of announcement-based information, news targeted towards the individual, which could be job or role focused. We also push out information around service health, outages, alerts that could deflect calls to our service desk. There's also elements of revealing additional information or badges as I interact with, so I can get kind of a quick look at maybe what's going on in regards to my requests or my active tickets. A modern user experience should also be mobile user-friendly, right? If not a mobile-first design. So here you see kind of the responsive nature of kind of the page as if I were using this on a smartphone, where things like my menu moves to kind of an off-canvas style menu when I can still access things like my favorites or favorite filters. I also can see kind of a history of my activities and kind of recall and go back to a record I recently looked at. Go into get help. So obviously our customers are likely going to need to get help with the services we provide to them. And our get help page here is really geared towards trying to encourage them to self-solve their own issues by revealing kind of additional information as they drill in. Don indicated kind of a way out, right? So the none of the above is a way to kind of quickly jump to a form and submit that easy ticket to the service desk for assistance. But I can also, if I drill into a topic area, say email and email access, it's going to kind of encourage me to say, here's some of the knowledge articles you might want to try to self-solve your issues. Here's an individual you can chat with to get that one-on-one consultation. Or if you can't chat right now, you could go through a scheduled appointment route, pick from a calendar, and get on that one-on-one consultation kind of as the time permits for you or time best fits for you. And I could always lastly fall back on submitting the ticket for assistance, which is going to leave a simple form for me to capture the details of what I'm having a trouble with. And I'm already drilled into a topical area, so we already know some more information about this particular user's issue, so we can route it maybe more accurately, more appropriately, but also maybe set the right expectations as far as response and delivery time. From here, I'm dropped into a status page where I can track the progress of my various requests. Right, I can see where they are in their fulfillment. I can see when it's expected to be delivered. I can also interact, provide updates, cancel my requests, or drill in and get more details about where is it at within the process. Right, this is also an avenue where I can provide some additional feedback to my fulfillment group. Something to the nature, and then my updates will show up on the right, my the provider's updates will show up on the left, and we can have kind of a journal back and forth of our updates. Requesting the goods and services that we provide is also, another primary use case within this portal. On this page, we present different service catalogs the user can choose through. So we can start with, say, the standard service catalog. Maybe I want to drill into, say, the hardware area, find maybe a desktop I'm looking to replace my current desktop. And from here, I can obviously shop like I would normal an Amazon shopping experience. Say this and that, and I can add this to my cart and maybe check out later. I can also, if I wanted to add some other things into my cart, I could look for, maybe I really want a laptop as well. And I can add something like this MacBook into my shopping cart as well. And some other options is if I wanted to buy this on a regular basis or request these types of services on a regular basis, I can save these as favorites. Maybe this is my Apple laptop's favorite. And then I can recall any of my favorites that I have out here in terms of Apple hardware and look for items that I've kind of saved as a preference. Now that I've got items in my cart, this is where I would go to kind of adjust the quantities, see the details, apply my business reason, and place this for order. If I'm not ready for now, I can actually kind of save this as a wish list for a future purchase, kind of save these for later, and maybe check out and buy them at a future date. All right, so let me show, so obviously I'm kind of showing this in the Metro style look and feel. Let me show you there are alternative themes kind of in here. And I wanted to bring up that the way we kind of approach the themes for these portals is that the themes contain the styles, but they also contain what content do we show on the various sites. So for our customers, what we'll typically do is take one of these themes as a starting point, we'll copy it, make it a customer-specific theme, and then we'll apply kind of customer-specific styles as well as override any of the content. So if there's a home page, if we want different content on the home page, we would adjust kind of the content macro for that home page on a per customer basis. And that kind of allows for that customer personalization and allows for a very open toolkit for providing that unique customer-branded experience. Let me quickly show you a couple of other themes here just so you get a sense of how different one can look from the other. I'll start with kind of a casino theme, a black and red theme. Let me refresh this page. So you'll see a lot of the same use cases of getting help, getting stuff, getting status. Things like the menu are still, we're leveraging the off-canvas style menu over here where I can get to my various options. There's a use of putting the tickets on the home page so I can quickly check the status of my tickets, provide updates, and filter these for looking at specific records. Things like news and events show up as kind of revealing on the top over here. Same with things like my favorites, dashboard recently viewed, I can see all those in here. Right. From a mobile view perspective, kind of looks like this. Right. It's the same kind of concept. And then if I did a search, I can do a search and kind of look at my results and filter and find the records I'm looking for, with various kind of keywords and other various filters to kind of help me find what I'm trying to order and request. So one of the theme, so this one here as far as a vertical navigation theme. Main difference here is the placement of the menu. So it's pushed out here on the navigator or on the widget on the side. Use of things like modals for pop-ups of our favorites and events and notifications kind of show up in those ways. You'll see multiple menus or sub-menus being used. And then I also want to highlight on this home page, we've made it so that they don't have to go very far to get answers, right? I can see information about my services, kind of on a services tab. I can see information about alerts on an alerts tab, and also pushing towards a more search first kind of model. And obviously check the status of my tickets is also located conveniently on this home page. So I'm going to move back to Metro just to show the rest of the demo kind of in our Metro default theme here. So I want to move away from kind of that customer perspective or customer front door and kind of hit on that second slide, or second aspect of my first slide, which was the service definition. I'm going to go define a new service just so you can kind of see some of the componentry that would go behind creating a service and presenting that service information to your consumers. Let me start with, I'll create a service. I'm going to call this expense management. I'm going to set someone named Don as our owner. And then this would be where our service taxonomy would come into play. I can pick from our various classifications and organization. I'm going to classify this as finance under our business applications tree. I'm going to say there is a price component to our service and it's charged back on a monthly basis. And then I'm going to copy some description information just so you don't have to watch me type. Copy that in. Copy in some at a glance information here, which I'm just going to copy in as kind of straight HTML code. And then I'm going to save my service. So one of the things that happens when I created this service is it created a default offering for my service. And these are really going to be where I set my different service commitments. And I could have multiple different flavors, so I could have, gold, silver, platinum level offering. In this case, I'm just going to have one offering and one kind of standard price. I'll just set it at $30 a month. I'll save that. And now I'm going to link it to some commitments. And this is where you can author our own commitments, or we can kind of have a library of set commitments. In this case, I'm going to use from our library, I'm going to set first a priority 1 resolution target of 8 hours for this service. I'm going to choose an availability target, say at 99%. And then I have one that's kind of specific to this service, which is a service delivery response target, which is going to cover how quickly we perform service requests that are contextually relevant to this particular service. So it takes a moment to kind of save this because it's recalculating all of our kind of metrics, looking back through the history of incidents and outage records to see what the percentage achievement is to date. All right, so now that I've got my commitments defined and my offering, I do want to do a couple other things, which is, first of all, I want to give it just a picture just so it has a little bit of different color to it. So I'll give it our application behind our expense management service is this Concur, so I'm going to give it a Concur picture. And the other thing I want to do is I want to make it so that when someone's looking at information about this service, I want them to be able to have some things they can request in context to this. Now, my options in defining this is I can either go out and pick from our list of requestable catalog items. I could go and define specific ones here, like my Apple desktop or whatever that I had. I could go add those individually, or I can link them to kind of a set dynamic query. So in this case, I've already got a query defined that looks for catalog items that match the keyword of Concur and are active catalog items. Those are kind of what I want to show to users as requestable items related to my service. And then the button for the request service, I'm just going to label Submit Request. All right. I think I've got my service set up. Let me show you now what it might look like in the portal or customer's perspective. Let me refresh here. I go to our service catalog. There's our various services, ones that I'm a subscriber to. Now if I look under my activities, I'll see a newly added service in my list of expense management. That's really where I want to go. Our expense management service, here's all the details I put in. Here's those offerings and commitments. I've got a health status tab here. And oftentimes we'll also have a feedback tab, and the reason why we don't have one right now is there hasn't been any feedback provided. So I'm going to go add some feedback just so you can kind of see that tab. Just say I love expense reports. All right, so I add my feedback, and now you'll see I've now got a new tab out here for any feedback. So any customers that add more feedback either through the workflows or directly as a kind of or ad hoc kind of basis will show up here as kind of qualitative information about our service. Now, because we linked this service to things that are request, here's where that button label came in, Submit Request. And when I click this, this is now where it's running that dynamic query to go get the things that are available for me to request in context to expense management. And so one of the things I want to request is request access to this new application or this new service. Kind of following the same process, I'm going to add this to my cart. I'll proceed to checkout. This is where I could add those items back into checkout again, but maybe I just want to order this one separately. They need to log expense reports. I'll place my order. Now, this particular request is a little different than some of the other requests in that most of our requests, we would drop them into the status page to kind of come back and track where it is within the workflow when it's progress. But this is where I kind of hit on that third pillar of my initial slide of orchestrating and automating services. So this is an example where the actual workflow behind this is a fully automated workflow that will create a new or add me to add me to this application through our identity management system as kind of a sub-service, sub-workflow kind of component. It'll also add me to various groups in Active Directory. It'll validate my access and then deliver my account information, and ultimately ask me to confirm that everything has been set up appropriately. So the page is basically auto-refreshed. It's gone through and set up my access. Now it's waiting for me to confirm resolution. So if I said no, it would then route in the workflow as a remediation task for someone to adjust and fix my access based off of my feedback. But if I say yes, then you'll see it moves to a completed status. All right, and just to kind of highlight, this actually did what it was supposed to do. I've got my kind of identity management system application dashboard open over here. One of the things I wanted to highlight is you'll see I got a new notification that I've now been assigned to this Concur application, which proves that I was provisioned as a new user to this application, which I could then start using for my benefit. All right, so on the one other thing I want to hit on with this service that we just created is the other side of the coin is there's the service owner that we assigned. We set to Don Goodliff. And Don has his own kind of view of this particular service within this portal. So for example, Don can come out here and go to Services I Own. See, he owns a couple services. One is this expense management service, which we could edit from here. Or more specifically, I want to go to the dashboard to kind of manage some of the information about my particular service. Right, so the types of things that Don's going to see on this page are if my service was dependent on other services, I would see alerts and outages, and I'd see health information pertinent to my service in this service health area. Also, any requests, incidents that affect my delivery or commitment expectations that are near breach would show up over here on the top. I can manage and adjust my offerings here. I could link my service to various knowledge articles kind of through this button. I can change how my service is linked to request items here. I also can get visibility to what's the recent feedback and notably any negative feedback that I've received. And then as you would expect, these are the things I care most about, right? These are my commitments that I'm being held to, and I can kind of slice and dice these if I had multiple offerings. I'd slice and dice them here and be able to see kind of how I'm performing over a period of time. So that actually is all I hope to cover today. So I hope this was helpful in kind of sparking some thoughts, for your own service catalog solutions and kind of seeing how both the customer kind of front end can be transformed and also where some of that service definition and request orchestration activities would fit into a ServiceNow kind of solution.
Okay. Thank you, Jeff. I like the way the dashboard's continuing to evolve and the more Apple-like look and feel. It is a nice option. So if you found this of any interest, here are some possible next steps you could take. The self-service catalog and portal, if you like what that Jeff showed and you'd like to play with it yourself, it's available as a fully functioning self-service demo. Just follow the links on our website. You can sign up and use it and play with it. It's very intuitive. It's fun and easy. Over 700 people have done so. So, you need to join the crowd and have some fun. Perhaps you'd like one of the guides we highlighted, either Services Definitions Dictionary, Taxonomy Guide, or a Services Governance Guide. If you are interested in that, just reply via email to Stephanie, and we'll be in touch to get it to you. And last, if you are at all interested in establishing sort of a clear direction for your catalog, as well as a roadmap and strategy, it might be worth taking a deeper look at our 2-week offering. As I said, it's how 90% or so of our customers actually begin. So that's all we've got today, and we'll open it up for questions if we have any.
We do have some. Before I get to the questions, if you're interested in any of those documents, you can email me at marketing@evergreensys.com. That's marketing@evergreensys.com. And I will have someone get back in touch with you and get you those documents and walk you through them. Let's see, questions. Yes, Don, I've got one for you and a couple for Jeff. So, Don, starting with you. You mentioned your services definition guide goes beyond idle. Can you elaborate on that?
Okay, great. I got a question. I don't get many. Okay, so yes, what we did was we went through and reviewed all the idle definitions and extracted any that applied specifically to designing, delivering, or managing IT services, not IT activities, but IT services. And we took all those and we looked for missing or incomplete definitions from our perspective and what we learned about this in customer-centric ITSM, and then we created or added to them as needed to meet that. So you don't think that we're taking undue liberties with idle. We do in that definitions guide, we have the idle definitions in black, and any enhancements or additions we've made are in green, so you can see them.
Great, thanks, Don. Jeff, for you, regarding services ownership, how do you transfer ownership to someone else within ServiceNow? For example, if a service owner leaves the company or if they change roles.
So, the service owner can, certainly on the service definition, the service owner can be moved from, one individual to the other. And oftentimes that could be its own catalog request that you would have with your own workflow around some of the tasks and activities to transition from one ownership individual to another. But basically it's primarily an update to those attributes of that service definition, and then obviously they would have, once it's changed owners from one to another, they would have their own, the new owner would see that service in the dashboard and be able to manage and adjust it and kind of take ownership from there on out.
Great, thanks, Jeff. A couple more for you. Are there any special licenses needed to support what was demoed in ServiceNow?
So no, not necessarily. There are some plugins that I've activated, such as there's a service portfolio plugin which kind of covers that, some additional details around the definition of the service, the offerings and commitments that I showed. So that's an optional plugin. One part I did show was the automation via web services to our identity management solution, which we're actually using a product called Okta. That wouldn't require additional licenses because web services is platform-based. Though we are integrating through that same web service or the same workflow I showed, there was an integration to Active Directory to add me to various groups. That would usually be done via the ServiceNow orchestration, which is a separate license. But could also be performed if you were to create web services or other interfaces to Active Directory to kind of support that same same behavior. I would also just note that when it comes to orchestrating the human tasks and the information handoffs between fulfillers, that too is a very significant value to a lot of customers to have that consistent standard way of delivering a service that you can meet and exceed or match the expectations of customers.
Jeff, another one, what are the services you commonly see being automated?
So, I kind of did one in the demo today, which was access. I would say the other ones we see very, very similar, very commonly are employee change type of activities, your onboarding, offboarding, a role change. And those are certainly painful to a lot of customers that we see. And I'd say also, especially for onboarding, they can set a bad impression of the service providers kind of out of the gate for a new employee. And I'd say password management and account access are certainly very popular automation use cases, as are consuming computing power, maybe through Amazon, EC2, or Azure, or SkyTap. And I'd say in general, we look for the biggest business savings to be derived, and this often does come in the reduction of kind of human time spent on fulfillment activities, but it could also be value added to the consumer through kind of service quality and goodwill.
And one last question. So if anyone else has questions, please go ahead and send them in. Jeff, in regards to the user experience, service definition, and orchestration, in regards to user experience, service definition, and orchestration, is there one we should do first?
That's a good question, and Don kind of hit on in his slide whether you go tactical versus strategic. Obviously, that's where you probably want to make a decision as to what's the best place to start. I will say that big bang approaches where you try to do all three aspects in kind of a complete form rarely work, and so we tend to see people be most successful when they break it up into manageable chunks and can kind of drive the biggest benefit, adoption and transformational change. I will say it is common for a lot of customers we work with to start with a new portal experience, have some service definition and taxonomy to frame out the services, and as well as do orchestration or automation on a couple key services to kind of serve as the marketing showcase of what's possible and kind of fuel that service improvement program.
I do have one more question that came in, Jeff. Let's see. IT service descriptions are pretty self-explanatory. What can you share around best practices for building non-IT service descriptions, especially if management does not see the value?
I don't know if Don wants to take that one. That one might be better for him.
You're ducking the question.
Nice.
Yeah. Just punted on that one, didn't I?
Sorry. Yeah, actually, you got me there. I was only half listening because it was going to you. So let me see. IT service descriptions are pretty self-explanatory. What can you share about best practices? None. Okay. If management does not see the value. Well, I think the answer, actually, even the question itself is kind of fun. When you say IT service descriptions are pretty self-explanatory, and that may be true from the provider's perspective, but if we look at it from the customer's perspective, they need to be written in a way, in language the customer understands. And this is kind of a principle in service design process we always apply. It has to be simple, has to be clear, it has to be customer understandable. So that the provider is not who we're speaking to, the customer is, right? And so that's a bit more challenging. So the same exact principle applies whether it's IT or non-IT, is that it's got to be something that is very useful, very understandable, and very actionable against that target customer set. Who are the customers of HR services? Right? Could be the employees of a company. So what does it look like to them? Who are the customers of facilities management, of legal, of accounting and finance, of contracting? These are other kind of shared services, non-IT kinds of areas. I will tell you this, the principles for doing this are exactly the same. Okay? And it may be, in fact, that maybe there isn't as much acronym and techno-speak in non-IT areas, right? It's hard to know. But the principles for doing it are the same. It's customer-centered. And the other thing that comes out of it, which is kind of cool, I could talk for a long time on one question. The other thing that comes out of it is, if you think about it, if we're always thinking about the labeling and the perspective and the communication being in the customer's terms, then whatever section of the catalog that we're talking about or whatever area, it belongs to those customers. It doesn't belong to the providers. Because the truth is, they're the ones that are voting whether or not it's viable. Right? On the other side as well, the providers could be coming from all over the organization. It could be people in IT doing things, non-IT people doing things. It could be a combination of different providers to generate a service area or a service, right? So we don't want, this is where we get a little bit of culture here, we don't want anyone saying, oh, that area is mine, we own that. HR owns the HR area. That's not true, okay? That's not true. The customers that consume it own it. The rest of the organization can be delivering against it. So we're trying to break down those walls where people say, that's mine, not yours. That's not true, right? So it's, boy, I went a long way on that one. Apologize for that. But that's a great question.
Well, Valerie, thank you for that question. So, I don't see any other questions, so I'd like to thank you all for attending. Our next webinar will be on the 21st. We will be posting that topic and registration hopefully within the next day or two on the resources page, so I invite you to check that out, and we look forward to seeing you then. Thank you.